Hi, this is Moze Jacobs for the Bara Spoken Word, and it's the 8th of January 2022, and our first workshop or our first event in the new year will be a workshop, a self-publishing workshop by Derek Flynn, who's here with me, or rather he is in Tremor and I'm in West Cork, somewhere else. And he might freeze, and not because I'm so scary, I hope, but Zoom is sort of...
I promise it's just the internet.
Yes. Okay. Hello, Derek.
Hello, Moze.
Derek Flynn. Are you from Tremor?
I'm from Waterford originally and moved about a bit. We lived, myself and my wife lived over in the States for a good few years as well. And then we came back to Waterford and I moved to, we decided to hit the coast. So I moved to a little village called Passage East and I was living there for a good few years. And now I'm living in Tremor, which is a fabulous spot.
Okay, yeah. Waterford is really nice.
Much like West Cork.
Yes, Ireland is really nice. No. Could you introduce yourself in professional terms? Like,
yeah,
you have many hats, I think.
Yeah, I've a few, mostly writing hats. I'm a musician as well, I play a bit of music as well, but it's mostly about the writing. So I do, I teach creative writing classes. I also teach drama classes, and then I'm a published writer as well. I have some books out, and I'm a playwright. I've done some plays as well, and they've been performed in Waterford and in Dublin as well, in Smock in Dublin. So yeah, it's kind of the day job is teaching and writing, basically.
Okay, great. And if you say you're a musician, what instrument do you play? Do you have a band? Do you write songs as well?
Yeah, I have a lot of original stuff. I played in a few bands over the years. At the moment now, I'm not doing a lot with the music. It's mostly about the writing, but I would do the odd gig here and there, and mostly just solo now at the moment. Okay. So play guitar and sing my own stuff.
Is there anything on the internet under any name that we could see?
Yeah, well, most of my stuff is on Facebook. So there's the books are under Derek Flynn Books, and the music is under Derek Flynn Music. So okay. It's fairly straightforward.
But people can click on a link and watch you and hear you.
Yeah, so there's lots of stuff, lots of music stuff on the Derek Flynn Music Facebook page, and then the links to all the books are on the Derek Flynn Books page.
Okay, let's go to books because it's a self-publishing workshop. You've self-published all your books, and I think there are 7 books or more.
Yeah, I just published my 7th just before Christmas. Yeah. So yeah, there's actually 5 full-length novels and 2 kind of novellas in that, basically. And so the first 3 books, are John Ryan books, and John Ryan is the main character. He's a cop turned detective, so they're kind of crime thriller books. There's also a standalone thriller book in there, and then there's a couple of novellas. One of them is a prequel to the John Ryan series, and one of them again is a standalone thriller. And then the latest one is very different. The latest one is kind of part memoir, part fiction. So I was living in New York playing music for 5 years, and it's the story of an Irish guy leaving Waterford, leaving Ireland in the kind of late 90s, turn of the millennium there, and going to New York to try and make his living playing music in New York. So that was my latest book. That was called The Ballad of New York.
Okay, and there is a kind of an excerpt in the Irish Times on the 10th of September 2021, and it is about the 11th of September 2001. So that's
yeah.
And were you actually there yourself during that time?
As I said, it's kind of part memoir and part fiction. So there's some stuff that's I just completely invented, but the majority of kind of the big events there are like September 11th. I was actually there
Mhm.
during that. So I had written a lot of that while I was there, and then years later, then when I came to writing the book itself, I kind of went back and took some of the stuff that I'd written at that time and included all of that. So the chapters and even the stuff the piece that I wrote for the Irish Times is it was written kind of in the heat of the moment, so to speak, while I was there, and just kind of impressions of what I got while I was there. And we came back to Ireland not too long, about 6 months after that, I think, because we were playing music for a living over there, and then the music scene just stopped after September 11th, and all our bookings were gone, and etc. etc. So we could have stayed on, I suppose, and waited, but the situation in somewhere like America, you got to be working. There's no other system to fall back on over there. So
Sounds a bit like COVID, actually. What happened to the music scene,
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like that. I mean, the city just shut down, and it stayed shut down for a long time. And I guess people, so even months afterwards, people were just nervous about kind of putting on live music or events or anything like that, from the point of view of, was it appropriate? Would people come out? All of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the city got back to normal eventually, but we decided to, at the time in Ireland, it was the Celtic tiger had been in full bloom, so we decided, well, why not come home for a while and see what it's like, maybe play some gigs back in Ireland. So we did that, and we ended up staying.
Okay, you're going to read a bit about from that book, I think.
Yeah.
And Ballad of New York. And but could you say, before we move on to the self-publishing part, could you say something about how it has affected you? Because it's it's a very dramatic. It was dramatic even to watch it on television. And I'll never forget. It's one of those days that you won't forget, even if you were not there at all. But if you were there, how has it affected you in the short term and in the long term?
Yeah, I think one big thing it did, it gave me it opened my eyes to New Yorkers, because they come across to a lot of people as very self-centered and kind of not a part of a community or anything like that. It's dog eat dog world in New York and all that stuff, and it is to a certain extent. But what I saw was an amazing outpouring from the people of New York for their neighbors and friends and strangers, people I knew who owned restaurants, just cooking up batches of food and bringing it down to ground zero at the time. And, everyone just jumped into kind of the thick of it right after it happened. And there was an amazing sense of community. That's the one thing I remember most about it. It was a horrific, horrific time, but I think the one abiding memory I would have is of just a sense of community and people just looking out for each other, and it was an amazing thing to see in a city that's supposedly so not soulless, but kind of in the sense that, there's kind of, you would think of it as kind of no sense of a community in a city like that.
Egotistic in a way.
Yeah, very much so, and of course there is, and I'm sure it's gone back to that in New York since then, but the same with any major city. But I think it was amazing to see, and it was true of a lot of America as well. A lot of Americans came from different places to help out in Ground Zero, and it also showed an ugly side, obviously, as well. There was a lot of kickback against Indian people and Muslims and stuff like that, that was, completely uncalled for around the country. There was attacks on mosques and stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. So it did show an ugly side as well. But the one abiding memory I would definitely have is of the kind of the camaraderie and the warmth and community shown by the people of New York, especially,
Oh, well, that's amazing that you say that. But you do not consider it a personal trauma in a way, because were you close to where it happened? Were you?
No, I would have known people who were definitely closer to it than I was. We lived in Brooklyn, and we were living kind of out on the outskirts of Brooklyn, so we were a good bit away from it. I had a friend who worked in downtown Manhattan and was there on the day and walked over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I had a friend who was an artist who lived just across the water and saw the second plane go in. So there was other people who were more closely kind of affected by it than I would have been. But nonetheless, it was, there was little things that really brought it home. We walked out we saw it that morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't move from the TV till about 3 o'clock that afternoon. And when we went outside to get in the car, there was dust over all the cars, and it had actually traveled from Manhattan all the way down to where we were in Brooklyn. Just this dust, this fine dust, and little things like that, and as I say in the book, there was like a cacophony of just news reports everywhere you went. There was silence, no one was talking, and there was just this cacophony of news reports of TVs and radios, just constantly going, and no one saying anything. It was very eerie, but yeah, it's not something that I'll ever forget, and it was one of the major events in my life, I think. It changed everyone's lives, it changed our life in the sense that I might still be there had it not been for 9/11 as well. I probably may not have left.
Okay, thank you very much. To the self-publishing, have you self-published all your books?
Yeah, I started in I think about 4 years ago now. In 2018, I think was the first one I published, and I'd been writing for a good few years before that, working on novels. I had a few kind of novels finished, and then I had been submitting them to agents and trying to get a publisher, and that was just a long, torturous process. And I think the worst part of it wasn't even like getting rejected. The worst part was when you came really close, which I did a few times, and then just knocked at the last hurdle kind of thing. And I just started to think, I've got all these books here, well, a few books that I had, and I had ideas for other books and blah blah blah, and I have all these ideas, and am I going to spend the next few years just knocking out these, letters to publishers and sending them out? And at the time as well, when I was doing it originally, it wasn't as easy to email publishers and agents as it is now. Yeah. A lot of it was mailing stuff, so there was a lot more work involved. You're printing up your manuscript, you're posting it, you're doing all that kind of stuff. So there was just a huge amount of work, and it was very, very time consuming. And the couple of times that I came close to it, you get the letter back from the agent or whatever to say, yeah, we're interested, send on your manuscript, and then, yeah, we're really interested, and it would drag on, and then at the last minute, so sorry, we filled our roster for this year, try again next year, or we're publishing another book that's similar to yours, we're very sorry. It could be the smallest little thing that you got knocked on. So I just kind of started to think, this maybe self-publishing is the way to go, because I want to get these books out there. More than anything, I wanted to just get the books out and just hopefully get them into the hands of readers. It wasn't even about making loads of money or selling a bestseller. It was more so, I have all these books and all these things that I want to get into the readers' hands, and how do I do that? So self-publishing was the way I decided to go. Okay,
we're not going to ask how you do it, because that's for the workshop. But my one question is, if tomorrow you get a publisher on your doorstep saying, hi, I like your self-published books, can I publish you? Would you say yes?
Oh, I think I probably would, but I think maybe the way to go nowadays is probably, as what they say, a hybrid, which is that you might still self-publish, perhaps under another name, if your publisher didn't want you to publish under your own name, because it tends to be, if you're lucky enough that you get your first book out and then they want another book from you, it tends to be once a year, maybe even longer. And I write quite a lot, and I publish quite a lot, so I think once a year might be a little bit too little for me. So and I think if I was writing, let's say, a series like the John Ryan series that I've written, I might like to step away and write something else completely different, and maybe self-publish that under another name or do something like that. So I think going both ways would be a great way to go.
By the sound of it, you find writing relatively easy to do?
No, I won't say easy. I've been at it for years, so I suppose I find it easier than I would have, and I'm faster than I would have been. But no, I think same as every writer says, every time you sit down to write something new, it's just it's the same thing again. You think, how am I going to write 80,000 words? When you look at that blank page. But then, as I say in the writing classes, you just put one word in front of the other and just keep doing it until suddenly you have a few pages, suddenly you've got a chapter, suddenly you start seeing the shape of this thing, where it's going, and you just keep pushing forward. And I think I write faster than some people, not as fast as others, definitely. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot more prolific than me, but yeah, I wouldn't be one of those authors that would release a book every 10 years or every 5 years. I definitely want to be, I have a lot of ideas for things, so I'd be getting stuff out there,
Just one more question about this. Do you ever have self-doubt when you start a new book, regardless of the fact that you've already written so many books?
100%, yeah, 100%, yeah. And I think I found even myself in probably in different ways. I wouldn't say, oh, my first book wasn't great and the next one was better and the next one was better. But I do find as I go along that I am a little bit more confident in certain ways, that I know, I know kind of how I should be putting things together to a certain extent. But that doesn't change, like someone will say to me, God, your first book was my favorite one of yours. And then someone else will say your latest book is my favorite one of yours. So I don't think, that's down to the reader, really. All that's made easier for me is just that I know a little bit more about, the structure and how it works and stuff like that. But when it comes to writing a good story and keeping the reader turning the pages, that's terrifying every time you sit down. I think the only good thing is that the more you do it, you get a little bit more comfortable at it. And it's the same with self-publishing. When you go to self-publish the very first book, it's terrifying. And you get used to, you start to see the little things that you can do every time then, and it becomes that little bit easier and easier, but it's never not daunting, either writing or publishing it.
Okay, good. Thank you for this reply. The last thing I want to ask, you're also presenting, or are you the organizer and initiator of a writing event?
Oh yeah, the Wax Lemon, yeah, the literary journal. We just had a launch, an online launch, obviously, for our third issue last night. So we started that in October of 2020. Okay. And we're on our third issue now. So we come out about twice a year. It's myself and another Waterford writer, Joanne McCarthy. We both founded it and we're the co-editors of it. So yeah, we have issue 4 now. We'll be opening up for submissions in January for issue 4, and we're delighted with how it's gone. It's sold really well. We've had some great work in it. And last night we had over 30 contributors came on a Zoom, and we put it out on Facebook Live, and they all read the piece that they'd had in issue 3. So it was lovely.
And what are the criteria?
We publish pretty much similar to most literary journals, and it's a print literary journal. We publish poetry, flash fiction, short stories, art and photography, and we just basically ask that people submit something in just one genre. So if you're a poet, submit up to 3 poems. Flash fiction writer or short story writer, we take one short story up to 3,000 words, sorry, up to 2,000 words, and 2 pieces of flash fiction. And then art and photography, we're always delighted to get lots of art and photography, because that's the least we get. We get lots and lots of poems. We don't get enough photography and art, so we're always looking for more artists and photographers to send us stuff.
Do you pay the contributors?
We don't at this moment in time, because it's literally just the 2 of us, and we run it on a shoestring. But every contributor gets a copy of the issue. So
and an ice cream. And what are Tra Tales?
That is an event that we ran in Tramore up to COVID, and hasn't been run since COVID, unfortunately. But we hope that if the restrictions ease in 2022, we'll be bringing it back. It's a night of music and poetry and short story readings, where anyone can just basically turn up and play a song or read a poem.
And what location was it in? And will it?
It was actually upstairs in a little pub in Tramore. There was a little room upstairs in the pub, which was gorgeous. Unfortunately, the pub is still closed, and I don't know if they're going to be reopening. So we might be looking at a new venue, but we're definitely going to try and do something with Tra Tales in 2022. It's a lovely kind of gathering for people. You don't have to be a published writer or a professional writer or anything else. You can just come and tell a story or sing a song or whatever,
May I ask why you didn't go on Zoom with it?
We were going to go on Zoom with it, and some of the people that would be involved in it might not be that tech savvy. So it was going to be, it could have ended up being a bit of a kind of a disaster, basically. And while we were thinking about all that going on, then we just noticed then, you know, people were just kind of getting tired of the Zoom thing. And they're kind of, at this stage now, I think a lot of people are, you know, kind of worn out a little bit with the kind of thing of, you know, watching 2 hours worth of something like that, maybe, you know what I mean? So and it's, I don't know, it's just, there's a community sense to it as well, you know, people can just wander in and stuff like that. So we're kind of trying to keep it that way, you know.
Okay, that sounds fair enough. But I still look forward to seeing you on Zoom on the 12th of January from 8:30-ish onwards.
Well, it's actually wonderful that the bars have continued to do it, and it's wonderful that they've got such an audience for it, because they've bucked the trend, may I say, which is wonderful.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of international poetry and writing events, I think. So people, and that's part of the excitement, I think, that we can, you know, talk. This one of the people who've already booked for the workshop is in Greece, so he can come.
Really? That's great.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that was one aspect of it. I will say, the one aspect of the Zoom thing that people seem to love. Still, we had someone from Berlin, someone from Australia. Who came to, it was morning for her in Australia, it was nighttime for us last night, but they were saying, just, you know, it's lovely just to be in even if it's on a Zoom, just to be in with a group of like-minded people and reading your work, which is lovely as well, you know.
Yeah, it is great. Okay, thank you very much for this, Derek. And
thank you, Moze.
Okay, bye-bye.